So, hello. Welcome to today's webinar about another kind of education with Justas. So, welcome too. So a bit about the webinar. We're gonna start by getting a bit into about the state of the world today, and actually how do we at DNS we are how do we tackle or address some of our big issues of our time. So maybe I'll start with a bit introduction about myself. So my name is Justas. I am from Lithuania, 24 years old. I graduated DNS 2 years ago. Hi Kai, hi Katka. It was quite a big change for myself to go through the program. And that also brought me on a journey of finding out how do we create another sort of education? How can we be part of changing our society? Because I got to learn there's many wrongs or things that are not going a right way, and I got to know that education is a way to go through. So bear with me, and then I prepared a small PowerPoint which I complement with some personal stories. And then just feel free to ask questions at any point through the presentations. I'll get to answer them as well. 2 seconds. Two seconds, just need to set up some visuals here so you can get to see me. Hi Almudena, hi Fevronia. There we go. Can everybody hear me very well? I cannot hear the audio from my side, so I hope you can hear me. So we have some technical issues, sorry. Okay. We're learning a bit to do webinars here, so it's not always going very splendidly. It's the first trial, so sorry for that. Yeah, I think the essence is to start to what is another kind of, like, to ask what is the question. The question is, what is another kind of school? And that's the question I hope we're gonna go through the presentation and you get some idea as what could it be, and also how can you use some of the knowledge also maybe we practice here to yourself. So I'll start with the question, what is the purpose of a school? And that's a very, I think, relevant question to ask today, especially if you look at our history of what actually started schools to be. And schools actually started, like mainstream public schooling started in around the 18th, 19th century. And the need for then for schools was actually, it was to have efficient and productive factory workers. So one of the main needs were there that the student is disciplined and is able to produce and has some basic knowledge so he can work in a factory or in some sort of production. And that was the start of public schooling. It was a national interest, because every state had the interest to grow their production, to increase their capital, and that was the essence of the school formed. And I'll say that since that had happened until today, schools have changed very little, but our world has changed drastically. One of the you could say ways you could look at it, if I just take now the state of the world of what is reality now with the internet, with the media, with everything, the knowledge, all we have, is that is a very complex world, a very fast changing world, and then also there's a lot of many issues in our society that we have upon us, especially this generation. Some of the issues we have is that we have a climate crisis. Yeah, you can see a bit on the left. We had also a protest of Friday for Future. Protest in our local area, but yeah, we had a huge climate crisis where scientists say that in the next 12 years, if we don't change our ways of living drastically, there will be irreversible changes that will affect the whole world, and will not be able to go back to the old systems or old climate. We have also many ongoing wars and conflicts, and then maybe these conflicts, they're not based in Europe or around us, but there's enormously many of them, and then it's becoming to be a distance warfare. And I think the issue here is, though, that people don't feel it. There's a war and conflicts going on, but we don't know about it, we don't hear about it, or we hear a very small part of it. Another aspect is that we have in Europe a huge crisis of individualism and egoism, and this topic I really want to discuss more. If you look at from our study travel in DNS, students often travel to Western Africa. And when they travel there, one thing that they notice when they meet people who are for example, in Guinea-Bissau, who are in extreme poverty, and they, even though they have almost nothing, very often they're very happy people. And the question is, okay, why? How can they be happy? They don't have many belongings. They don't have many things. How can they live so happily? And one of the conclusions is that actually the people, especially the poor, even though they don't have much, but they're very close with their neighbors, with their community, their people, because this lack of resources and that they replace it with lack of security, like having a community that gives you security and possibility to survive. In Europe, especially the western part of Europe, there's no need anymore for this social bubble community to support you, because we're relatively rich. We can we can buy our food, we can have our own apartment, we have our own place, which is very nice because we have comfortable lives. But we also don't have a need to have a community, to have a group, a need to socialize, and that brings a lot of you could say, I would call it an epidemic of where people are very lonely. Some are very lost, and seeking for help is not seen as a norm anymore. And as another aspect to this is that the raising social media and internet usage even increases that, because yes, you can be it's called social media, but it's not very social because you don't see a person, you don't have an eye contact, and it's hard to transmit feelings and communication with each other. So that was a bit about individualism, egoism. We'll come back to that, of what to do about it a bit later. Another aspect I want to touch is the raising inequality between the rich and the poor. This is one of the aspects that actually I don't hear at all discussed in the world media or so, and this has been happening especially in the last 20-30 years. This has grown a lot, meaning that we today in society we have the super rich who are getting more rich, we have the poor who are getting more poor, and this gap is increasing day by day. And that means that we live in a reality where there's a lot of walls in society. It's not just national borders. There's walls between people, between classes, and they don't see each other, meaning that both groups, they alienate themselves from one another. And another aspect is that we have our society, which is changing faster than ever before. And that leaves us to a question: we do not know what kind of future the youth will have, so what are we preparing them for? And if you just look at the perspective that in maybe how many today we're like 7.5 billion people, and 100 years ago we were 1 billion people on the planet, yeah. And that we had throughout history, we had times where every 11 or every 15 years the population raised by 1 billion people. And so a big amount of people creates a lot of progress, a lot of changes in our society. Another aspect is that our science has also increased tremendously. And that means that our daily reality is being changed also very fast. And that also leads to a situation where a generation in the past could be every 10 or 20 years. When I say a generation, means that a young person, me, growing up in a certain time, had very similar circumstances around them. Yeah, we had, for example, the baby boomers, who were after the Second World War, and when our economy got back into place, where they had a lot of babies because the life was very comfortable and well, and it was a prosperous time. Yeah, and that was a generation of 20-30 years. And in the last 20 years, actually, our society changes so much that a new generation is happening around 7-6 years. That means a child growing up 7-6 years from now or before has a very big, a very different reality he's growing into. And when me as a teacher, what is my consideration behind that is, okay, what kind of reality does this child grow in? What kind of how do we prepare this child for the future? Yeah. Yeah, what can we do about that? Yeah. One of the things that we practice at DNS, and I have to use my experiences from DNS, and also myself, I'm quite curious about all sorts of pedagogical theories and progressive educations, but very often they have their own little theories that they keep to, and they don't unite that much. And I think one aspect why I actually stayed and continue with DNS, I see a lot of potential in this pedagogy because it's always shifting, it's changing, and then there's some core principles to that. One of them is that we train youth to have a critical mindset, and the idea of to learn how to learn. And this is often what schools are lacking today. They teach you a lot of knowledge. So you go to a class, you receive knowledge, and then you leave the class. And then you go to the next class, you receive more knowledge, and you move on. Actually, you don't learn how to gain knowledge. One of the aspects we at DNS we practice is that the students, they conduct field investigations. That means when they choose a certain topic, for example, in their Western Africa travel, they choose, if you say we're in Morocco, you make a group of 3 people and you choose a topic, let's say education, and you go investigating this education. And there's very little guidelines of what you should do. The first step is maybe going to a school for you to find out and meet some teachers. You get to know a few teachers and what is their reality, and then you raise some questions. Okay, what is the situation today? What is going on? And you deep look into them. I had personally I had an investigation in Botswana with my teammate where we were looking into agriculture. Botswana, it's in southern Africa. It's relatively okay economically area, but the thing is Botswana is 90% a desert. And me and my teammate, we decided to investigate about how does the country plan to be food sustainable in the few years. So we did that. We went out. Basically, we left our bus group. We went out, and then we started our investigation by going to a supermarket and looking. Okay, what does the supermarket not have? And then we looked around. We saw that it doesn't have many vegetables like greens. So we went outside of the supermarket, and we saw a lady selling tomatoes. We went to the lady. We asked her about where does she get her tomatoes. We also asked a bit about her life and so on. And she says, I'm gonna get my tomatoes from a farmer over there. Okay, then we went to a farmer and we interviewed the farmer. How does he grow tomatoes? What kind of challenges does he have? We got to be friends, so we also managed to live and stay with his family for a day. The next day we set off to University of Agriculture. We went tried to go deeper in this topic by meeting some teachers. And there we met very enthusiastic and passionate teachers who care a lot about sustainable agriculture. So anyway, this is a method we practice at DNS, but it can be done in many other ways. Actually, why not, when you're in school or university, why not just pick some questions and try to answer them as a group? Yeah, we are very much used to receiving information straightforward, is just passed on, but learning how to get this information is another challenge that schools and universities often do not tackle. And if you look at the future, which is not known, then the only skill you can train is actually, for youth to have useful skills, is to learn how to learn and how to adapt. Another principle is holistic at DNS is holistic development, and this is considering that in schools we get graded, in universities we get graded for our knowledge about specific topic, but often these schools and universities we miss out on the development of our, could be emotional intellect. How do we understand ourselves, our feelings? It can also be physical, like coordination, movement, musical skills, rhythm. These things are often left out to the side. There's also one famous speaker, Sir Ken Robinson. He says that arts are just generally underappreciated in our society, though actually arts are very interlinked with a lot of subjects we learn about. So yeah, the idea of what direction do we want to head in the future is that we have human beings full of all different capacities. And it's also a statement, I'll say, against specialization. There is a big tendency today that we become experts in one specific field, and that's what we're good in. But in reality, is that the way to go? I'm not against experts. I think it's good to have some specific experts, but we also need people who are also generally good in diverse skills and possibilities. One example is that in Denmark, the Danish people, they like to build bridges because they have many islands. And when you build a bridge, you need all sorts of people. You need an architect, you need marine biologist, you need somebody who would see how much traffic would be going through this bridge. There's also a social part to it because you add some new connections to cities. So basically, to build one bridge, you need all sorts of specialties and all the sorts of considerations. Yeah, and that brings also the need of people who have general knowledge or skill in being a bit good in everything. So it's this holistic development is having these diverse skills, but it's also being developed in all sorts of ways. Another aspect, which is also a big principle at DNS, is solidarity and collaboration. Like I mentioned, we have a huge issue of individualism and egoism in our society. And that leaves us to a very challenging state where people they exclude themselves. I'll call it, they alienate often themselves without the wish to do so, but they alienate themselves from society. They look at me, myself, and the world around me. While this, you could say, you could say it's even like a self-defense mechanism from the world. But this is one aspect that we also very little learn about the world. I'll say, when we talked about the big issues and challenges of our world, why they are there is because people lost the capacity to collaborate. They lost the capacity to learn from each other and understand each other. And our society today, in schools especially, this aspect of being together with people and helping others and sticking together is not addressed. Actually, in schools, it's only one of the few places in the world where collaboration, working together, could be considered cheating. Like, when you take tests and you take tests or learning, you seek for help, or you might seek for help, and in school you have to know yourself, you have to learn by yourself. But when you get out of school, then it doesn't into ourselves, me and I should find out my own way by myself, because we were taught so. That was the right way to do things in school, and school represents lives as well. Yeah. How do we practice this at DNS is that the schools, our school, it's not just like a school and like we have a teacher and we have a student. We have all sorts, like we're very, what you call, there's no hierarchy between the teacher and the student. And the one saying we have is that when you're part of our school, you're not just joining the school, you're part of creating it. Therefore, every student in the school takes responsibility for what happens, for the sometimes challenges they face, but it's also for what they create. And that brings students to a very interesting state where you can no longer complain, like complaining is not good enough. You can go to a class and hear a class and then complain and not be happy about it. But here you say, okay, this happened. What are you going to do about it? How you will step up and bring this to be better or create it. And this brings you that you're not alienating yourself. Well, me, for example, complaining about somebody else giving a bad course or presentation, I can complain about it. I can also go and be part of improving it, maybe after giving feedback, or maybe also directly in the course by joining and adding my own input. Meaning you take responsibility in your community or group for the benefit of the majority. And I have experiences from different DNS students who have graduated DNS, and I asked them, okay, what was the most challenging part of DNS? They will say the team. And then I'll ask them what is the most beneficial part of the DNS program, and they'll also answer the team. It's because going through this whole program, the 4-year program with a group that you don't know about and you never met, and going through the different challenges that the program gives, be it the bus travel, be it living in a city together, be it having studies together, it brings you to many different scenarios where, regardless of your differences, you have to make it work together. You have to together to find solutions, find ways, and not give up on each other. And when you go through this process, when they say it's very challenging because it's tough, you have to touch some, you could say, address some issues that you would normally not do in the main world, like about behavior, about interaction of your teammates. But then you learn that actually by going through this process with this group of people, you are able to do it with anybody. And that is one of the, you could say, key essence of solidarity and collaboration. It takes patience, it takes hard work, it takes what we call frank speaking, that you're very honest and say when something's bothering you, share about it. When you're not feeling well, you share about it, because this creates a mutual understanding between you and your team and other people around. And this is not just for your group, actually, because it's also for you as individual to become richer. There is actually like one scientist, like education scientist, Howard Gardner. He in his theory, he has an intelligence which is called ability to cooperate with people. And this is the one that we normally say focus on training here, because when you're able to work with people, when you're able to communicate with people directly, you also become more happy or satisfied yourself, because you helping others or being part of a group, it brings happiness, which is how humans we used to live in the thousands of years ago. When we were hunters and gatherers, we were living in groups of from 80 people to 150 people. We are social beings. We depend on each other, we rely upon each other, and we need to stick together to survive. Only in the last 2,000 years or a few thousand years, partly because of religion, partly because of growth of the capitalist culture, have we become a human has become a very strong notion of an individual. Me, myself, and the world around me is something separate. Well, actually, we're very interconnected. So, this is some principles we practice at DNS, and that are very close to me, and I see a lot of students going through this process as I well did myself. Now I also want to share some about what kind of should lead us for an open future. I just want to mention that if you have any comments or questions, we're going to get to a question part very soon, so just bring them up so we can discuss them through. Um, we have a concept at DNS which is called an open future. And the open future has an aspect, it has two different aspects. It has one aspect is how do you create a future full of possibilities and opportunities for yourself? And how do you, and the second part is how do you create a world which has an open future. A closed future could be that that the world ends or there is no world. That's a closed future, something's finished. And open, it means all possibilities are there. The possibilities are there and you can take them or not and see it. If I take the personal one first, you as an individual you have a certain you say a certain capacity or to create pave your own path, I'll say. One of the how do you do that? Some of the ways we described a bit in the pedagogical principles as we were discussing: community, togetherness, being holistically minded, being critical. Another aspect is that you need to be positive. If you don't have positivity, it's very hard to you would call see opportunities, see solutions, find issues and look at issues and not as a problem but as solutions and possibilities. Curiosity, that's another trait that we often forget, is that we need to be curious, and curiosity is actually a skill to learn. You have this saying that sometimes the more you learn, the more curious you get about the world, and it's very fitting, I think, because people who are curious, are interested in life, they tend to have a positive and good future. And it also means that we have to have trust. And this is a very interesting one because we live in a society of fear. We live in a society where there's a lot of negativity going around. There's a lot of bad news spreading and going around, and it's not just a current state of the world, but it's also people react to negative news or bad news stronger. And somehow society uses this to get our attention. I'm not sure why, but it happens. And the people become fearful. People create stereotypes. People become fearful of going out. Just if I know how many stereotypes there is about Africa, about dangerous place to travel through, or not safe, or also about how people are, or that maybe they're generally violent, like this sort of ridiculous thoughts, which is based on that we hear things and we fear them, rather than trust and believe in the good of people and humankind. Another aspect is flexibility. This is a very interesting point, because as we said, the times are changing very fast today, and being able to flexible to adapt to the different issues and react upon them can mean that you become from a victim of changes to a change maker. And there's a very big difference. If I give an example, if you imagine the society is a train moving, yeah? You can be on this train, you can be moving towards, regardless what direction it goes, but you can be moving on it, or you can be a bystander. You're on the side of this train, you're seeing it move, but you're not part of running it. The people in the train, they're probably putting like sustainable coal or something to run it, but you're not part of running this train. And to be on this train, you have to have this capacity to be flexible and adapt and create, and seeing from the situation, create solutions, create your own development in it. I like to, if I look at the DNS program, the students, they go through enormous amount of changes because every 6 months they have a new period in the program. And that means that you as a student, as soon as you get comfortable in a specific situation, be it bus travel in the first year, they travel for 4 months with a bus, as soon as you feel comfortable in your bus travel and you learn the method of investigating and learning, there's a new situation that comes up, which is the next period, which is bring it to the public. And now you're a teacher in a teacher's shoes and you have to present what you have learned. You do that for a few months. As soon as you get comfortable, you move to a new period, which is the European reality, where you have to set yourself in a city and live with a team and get a job. This changes, it gives you this possibility of adapt and put yourself in a new situation. And then you have this group of people that you can stick with and problem solve and go through all these challenges. But it gives you a mindset where you're always moving and changing. I see I have some questions. I just want to get a bit into that. Yes, there's a question. How can we help people open up if they have closed themselves off, feeling shame because of taboo subjects and experiences that make them feel the world would not accept them? It's a very good question. How can we help people? Well, Kai, I think it's about I would say it's a step of being together with the people and trying to do that. I don't have a magical answer for this question. But I'll say that in our school, in our community, we have nearby the teacher training college, we have also some different care homes and schools for people with challenged youth. Yeah, people who went through different traumas or problems through their life, and now they were placed here to get better. And many of these youth, they don't just change because they have built in and grew up in a society which abuse them in certain ways. Yeah. But one element that we see and what works is that you have friends, you have people in the school center who you're always together with. And no, I'll call it, maybe it's an unconditional love, regardless who they are, regardless what they have gone through or did. We do not give up on helping them get better. So I think in this situation as well, it's to find, like, if you have these people, you need to find them, be with them, be together with them, and work, support them. And it's a very long sometimes it can be a very fast, sometimes it can be a very, very long process, where there's a saying that to change a human being, like almost drastically, it takes 7 years to create like a new pattern or way of thinking. It takes 7 years, so that requires some time and effort. Yeah. And in today's society, we also wish that things happen on the spot and very fast. Like from one day to another, we want something this and it should change and should move. But no, when you talk about human development, it takes time. It takes time and effort, and there's no general case, I'll say, because you cannot say a person has this diagnosis and this is the solution, because it doesn't work like this. You have to take every person as an individual case and see, okay, how can I support this person? What are the challenges he's going through? And what could be a good plan for him to get better? So yeah, my answer is that it's very individual, but I'll say by sticking together, being together. Then, we're gonna get to questions, and questions and answers. There's also a question, how can I register and participate in DNS schools? Thank you, Fevronia. Well, we have at the moment we only have a 4-year bachelor we offer, which you're welcome to join. Otherwise, we have sometimes camps, 1 week long camps where you can take part, and you can take part and a bit learn about our way of doing pedagogy. We also have some shorter our partner schools, they have some shorter programs where people can do their practice. We have like a 24 months pedagogical program where people can go do practice in some of the schools and learn about this type of pedagogy. Qualification, you just need a high school diploma. That's the only qualification you need to join DNS or any other program. So if people come with a wish to learn and get some practice, we have different opportunities. So you can just message me after and ask, I can answer you more concretely. So, okay, now I want to a bit share how some of these elements I mentioned before work in practice. We have, by the way, this is our school center. This is how it looks like, and we have 3 different schools. We have the DNS teacher training, we have a boarding school for youth, and we have a care home for people with challenges and difficulties that have been placed in the places. But now focusing a bit more on DNS, like I mentioned, we have no traditional hierarchy. We have like a saying that the common meeting governs the school. That means we are all part of running the school. We take ownership, we take responsibility for things happen, how they happen. We also take responsibility of taking care of the school, like practically, like cooking and gardening. Actually, at this very moment, we have two teams of DNS that have a garden action. So yeah, all the practicalities things come in, and then it also means that we make our plans together. There was actually a question should answer in the webinar, was that what does our daily life look like? When we're in the campus, we have a few things that are, every day happen. That's 8 o'clock we have breakfast, 1 o'clock we have lunch, 6:30 we have dinner. Everything around it you as a team, you as a group, you can create your plan around it. So we have for example, a period before Africa travel of 2 months, where students have 2 months for preparing for the bus travel. And what do you start with? You start from sitting down together and making, as a whole group, making a plan. What do we need to reach in the next 2 months? We need to get visas, we need to learn languages, we need to get study about the countries. It's to divide these responsibilities within a team and then work with them. And sometimes one teammate gives a course, sometimes a teacher gives some input. But this essence that this is what I call you're creating your program. You are the decisive force, the movement, and actually many students, they feel a bit out of place, because when they're in university or studying, they're used to receiving things, but now you get this responsibility and you have to make it happen. The same way the studies work, yeah. We can plan that. It's based on your self-initiative. We have some studies you can do, but how you want to do them, how do you want to present it, from what do you want to learn, you have to, as a team, find out, or as an individual. But we have some questions. What kind of practical knowledge you share? Practical knowledge. Well, in the college, I guess, if that's what you mean in the college, Ramo, you learn about all diverse topics in pedagogy, basically. Uh, and yeah, I hope that's what subjects, yeah, but the subject doesn't determine what exactly you learned in the subject. You have questions. Can we spread awareness and acceptance, talk about difficult things, encouraging people to be vulnerable? Yes, of course. I think, to build trust, you have to be open to be vulnerable. You have to be able to share your, I don't know, be deepest fears, deepest challenges, your own person, like everything on your mind. I think this is what is the most uniting. Like I was saying, when I talked about solidarity and togetherness, this is one of the most uniting points, that you're able to open up and speak openly and listen as well. By far, my personally, when I was going through this program, my highlight was in the third year of the program, when I actually managed to open up completely up with one of the my teammates, where we just almost in the evening we just sat down and we shared everything on our heart, how we felt, what is our thoughts about life, about situation, and so on. And I have never did this in my life with anybody before. And from that moment on, we realized, okay, because we had quite many challenges and difficulties in the past, because we couldn't really work together. But from that moment when we shared this, everything became like we started supporting each other instead of arguing each other. So I think, yeah, sharing and opening up is one of the key ways how to build solidarity. You have to be vulnerable, be vulnerable to get trust, and that's a very opposite of what we learn about in school, yeah, or in our society. You have to keep your shit together. You have to be strong, be a man, or that kind of thing. Yeah, that's a lot of nonsense. Yes, spread the idea that no past experiences, bad thoughts, or actions mean you're bad or can be loved. Exactly, exactly, Kai. I think one of the main aspects, like as a DNS, also I'm part of the DNS Teachers Council. I think one of the most important parts is that you, as a teacher, you take the student in their current state, who they are now as beings, what they're thinking about, what are their consideration, what is their behavior, and then how do you move them from then on. Yeah, forget everything, the past, conflicts, problems, or so on, because everybody has enormous luggage. But at this point, what can we do? What can we create? What is good to do? And that's again a very big, you could say, abnormality in society. Usually, you build your stereotype about the person from your past experiences, but if you only do that, you can use these experiences to benefit the person. But if you limit the person from these experiences, then you close the possibilities. We talked about open future. The aspect of an open future, that you have to see your past, you have to understand it, but it should not limit you from trying out and creating new things. And I think that's very important to keep. Yeah, so that's a bit about about I don't know what to call it, connection maybe. Yeah, taking people as they are. Yeah. So I have still another point about recognition and the possibilities after. I'll say hi, Ramu. Ramu, we can just chat a bit after this chat. You have very specific questions, so we can get into that. Okay? Thank you. Yeah, a bit about recognitions and possibilities after DNS is that basically, just a bit of background history here. Like, DNS has started since 1971 and it's had over 1,000 graduates since then. And today there's over over 60 different schools worldwide of DNS college. In Europe, we are the only one, but we have like many different schools in Southern Africa, in India, and some other countries, where every day there's like every year there's like a few thousand graduates from DNS pedagogy, the DNS way of learning. But here in DNS Denmark, we have our school has like 45 students. Some basic principles that kept and are still there, but there's also things that change. Some of the program or recognition and so on. And one of the main questions I get asked is, okay, what can you do after DNS? Well, very different things. There's no one story, to be honest. Every student has their own way, and some of the ways is that some continue their learning in some other fields. Some become DNS teachers in DNS. Others they actually get a passion to work with challenged youth, and because they're very engaged here with challenged youth and people with difficult paths. Others they go to work in a youth center. The most general tendency, I'll say, that people don't tend to go back to public schools. Very rarely that happens. Usually people stay in non-traditional, non-formal way of learning education, some youth camps, social work. It's because I think you also get this aspect, like another kind of teacher, like another kind of education. You get a perception that teaching is not just being in the classroom, it's a life experience as you're going through. And you as a person, you can teach and influence people in regardless the context. And every DNS graduates have their different path they want to go through. So that's what they do. Regarding employment, it's every the DNS diploma, like any other diploma, if you come back, I don't know, if you're from Finland, Kai, then you get a diploma and then you need to go to Finland and reevaluate and see what is it equal to. Often it gets counted some of the years, but maybe not a full degree, because probably in Finland the system is different how they measure teachers to be prepared to teach. So if you want to become a public school teacher, often you might need to take an extra course. If you become in private schools, usually it's enough because they also look very much in your personal experiences and your personal capacities, also with the diploma, and that you gain a lot in DNS, so they're usually very happy for that. Like in Lithuania, we have like a whole network of non-traditional schools that are asking, okay, when you have some graduates, remember to mention our name because we are looking for teachers. I'll say that generally, like in Europe today, we have enormous lack of teachers. And maybe you don't feel it, but for example, in Lithuania, in the next 2 years, 80% of the teachers are gonna retire. 80% in the next 2 years. That's like huge amount, and this is kind of pattern going through all Europe, because the profession of teacher is not very appreciated, it's very difficult, and it's not very attractive for youth. So actually there's a very big need for teachers, so I'm quite sure it's possible to find positions and jobs after that, especially with the capacities you gain. Fevronia, you mentioned holistic development. How does psychological development come into being? Could you specify, Fevronia? I'm not sure how to answer it. Psychological development. Like, how do we how do we learn about psychology, or is it like individually, how do you change as a person? So yeah, is it more like academic psychology, or is it individual, you mean? I'll try to answer both, because I guess it takes time before you hear the answer. So academically, we do studies. I will say we don't go too deep into psychology, but we do study it. We also have a subject, because it's also academically, it's, you could say, you study about pedagogy, yeah? You study about different theories, different ways, how also about emotional intelligence, but it's also what you as a student you choose to focus more on. Yeah, we have a subject called 21st century teacher, and this subject there's like enormous amount of theories you can learn about, but you have a limited amount. So what will you focus? Is it will you focus on psychology and emotion development, or you will focus more on didactics, or you'll focus more about John Dewey and learn by doing approach, or there's many theories out there. So it's also, like I mentioned before, studies are a lot driven by your personal motivation and wish, and that can be included. But I'll say now that was academic. Personally, you are learning a lot about you could say like I said, sticking in a team gives you chances that you really get to know people and how people work. Sticking with a team, like you go through the 4-year program, but also living now in our school center, which has people with all sorts of diverse backgrounds and with a lot of different what do you call you say conditions or sorry, the words are lost. Yeah, so basically psychologists, they say, okay, you have a certain diagnosis. Yes, you have a certain diagnosis, and then they put line up a bunch of them, and then you can see all these diagnoses, but you also take the person as he is and say, okay, what is his state, what can he grow with, and using this to work with the person. I think that also works so now I said how it works when you work with these students from care home, but also as a team, we have this concept of love and demand, that you love, you support, you help your peers, your teammates, but you also demand and challenge them to be more able, and that always goes on the level of understanding each other and seeing what state of mind each are in. Yes, Inka, you asked about okay, 1 second, I'm just gonna get into full screen now because I think my PowerPoint is over and you have many questions. Okay, so we go a bit more into Q&A, and then there's how to enroll procedure, which we can take later if you're interested into that. So 2 seconds. So I see your questions. Yeah. There we go. You had the question, what are the costs? Inka, the cost is we have an enrollment fee of 1,000 euros, which is the basis fee to join DNS. And then we have a tuition cost, which is 9,000 euros. And it's, even though it's just for the first year, this 9,000 euros, but it covers all the 4 years. I'm going to explain a bit how. So we have the enrollment fee, which is 1,000 euros, and everybody needs to pay that to join DNS. And then you can choose, either you pay the tuition fee yourself, or you can join a saving up free course, which starts between 9 months to 12 months before the program starts, where people come and earn the money together with us, because we have a network of schools that students usually get pedagogical jobs where they earn the money. So you could say you need at least 1,000 euros, and then if you want to pay everything yourself, that's 9,000 euros. And then when you're in the program, you don't have any more expenses. You don't have to pay for accommodation, food, or travel, or insurance. That is covered from what we call team economy. As you go through DNS, you have a team, your team shares your economy, and then there's some periods when you're spending this money, there's some periods when you're earning money together, and then other periods where you're earning and spending. So anyway, you don't use your private money. I personally started with 1,000 euros. I enrolled and I did the saving up and went through the whole program without using any more finances from my side. You're welcome thank you for the question, Fevronia. Kai, you had a question. Are you at DNS aware of many non-traditional schools? Do you have any connections? If some, after the studies, want to go study an art, for example? Uh, we're in contact with uh, closely connected. I think very few schools, but we're actually reaching out quite much more now. I personally was in the last few years discovering more about Waldorf and Steiner schools around in Europe and the different things happening there. Not to this extent that they can, we're linked and say that you can go to one or another non-traditional school afterwards, but I mean, we have quite a big network that we can find and learn, like you say, find out about all the different schools. So yeah, we have some connections. And I think part of our campaign is also to start. Personally, I don't know of any non-traditional schools in art at this moment. That's also not my biggest interest, I have to admit. But I'm sure there are some. Yes, Fevronia, you said, so we learn about ourselves and all the aspects of your being by working together with people. Yes. Yes, I think that we have a general tendency of, if you want to learn about yourself, you do that best while you actually work with others. First of all, like for example, if you go like academically, like about knowledge talking, you always learn best when you teach somebody else. Yeah, that's kind of it's even scientifically proven. You remember most and you recall best when you're able to teach somebody the theme or thing you're learning. You understand yourself best. This also, I believe, very much works with your personal development and also emotional intelligence. When you work with people, you get confronted in many different situations, which makes you think and reflect, okay, why does he do that? How does he do it? And when you do that, you also be able to reflect on your state of being and emotions. And then this is also in non-traditional education, this is also quite a big split. There's people who start, first I have to be fine, like there's like an 8 loop, yeah? Where in some schools you have to be fine to help others. And then via DNS we have the opposite, which is as when you help others, you'll become fine, or you'll be more capable or grow as a person. But it's also a mix, yeah? So you're helping when you're working with people. Sometimes you also need to take a step back and also just digest and reflect about things. So it's a constant, like a 8 turning around with finding its balance. But my starting point is that when you're with people, when you're working with them, when you're going through all sorts of experiences, that's when you grow as a person the most. And there's also this balance of like when you're individual yourself, there's like some limits you'll never cross, but with other people you cross these limits. Like one of the ways that the learning, what you call the you can say learning zone, there's a few learning zones. For example, there's this comfort zone where we're very comfortable and we don't really meet new knowledge, so we don't learn much. There's a certain zone of when you're challenged and you're not very comfortable, but you're challenged and you're able to take this challenge. And I'm having this now when I'm giving this webinar because I'm not used to speaking to a camera. And then you have the zone when you go too much. That means that you go too much and like you're so challenged you get paralyzed, or like the learning stops because it's too much. So there's always this balance, yeah, that it's a theory. I have the saying, like at DNS, we have if you imagine a student is standing on the cliff, then we don't want this is a cliff, yeah, so you'll fall off here, and the student can be in different phases. It can be very safely here, which is far away from the cliff, and he'll not he'll never be scared, he'll be okay. And then you can come closer where it becomes more scary and more challenging, but it should never reach the point where you're so close that you can fall off. So that's how I see this teamwork and working with people. It's a balanced thing, but I think as a starting point, you start by looking outwards the people in your surroundings. Yeah, I agree. Individualism is it's a very one of the biggest threats in our society today. Uh, if I go a bit more into that, it's a lot related with also capitalist system. Yeah, companies, and there's more profit when you're individual because everybody needs a car, everybody needs a smartphone, everybody needs their own apartment, and this makes our economy grow. I don't know if it makes people grow, but it makes our economy grow. Yes, students face their fears. Uh, I mean, yeah, everybody comes with their own challenges. Yeah, some come with the challenges of public speaking, where I've seen people coming from being barely able to speak in public. By the end of the program, they're like telling stories in their graduation and sharing very openly and confidently. That could be one fear. Another fear is maybe learning to be more empathic, or like challenge the person has. Another scenario, it could be what I don't know what kind of challenges can people have. It can also be academic, like a knowledge that you also can gain. So you, like you said, as the program brings you to very different scenarios, where in the first year you're learning about the global and the world, the second you learn about Europe, the third year you're teaching. You've all these bigger, smaller issues, challenges that you're going through, and that's a very exciting progress as well. So yeah, the students they face their fears with a lot of support and guidance. Yeah, so it's a very interesting process. Hey Barbara, yes, it's still possible to join the NS 2019 team. We have still 3 preparatory or open houses available in the next 3 months coming up, which you can take part of one of them, and then so you get a feeling of the school, and you can decide if you want to join the college. Okay, so we've been over 1 hour now. If you have any last questions, then bring them on. Maybe last few questions, and maybe that will be it for now. I will yeah, if there's also no questions, I would really much appreciate to hear your feedback. I'll say that this has been the first webinar for me, and I know I had some technical issues with the PowerPoint and so on, but if you could bring some input, what you were interested to hear, did you hear that or not? Is it a good forum to get to know more about the sort of learning and DNS? Yeah, just input is appreciated. Otherwise, you have more specific questions. Okay, thank you guys and girls. Yeah, otherwise you have any specific questions, I'm gonna we have, if you have any specific questions, you can write me into the email. I'm gonna leave it in the comment section. I'll say have a great day.